So good morning, no, even good evening, I think it is. Welcome to the Women's Business Club Roundtable. My name is Jasmine Mbye and I will be leading the roundtable today. So I'd like to say thank you for joining me. And I'm going to share some slides. I'm a trainer and I like slides because I'm also a speaker and I can talk, but I want to keep myself on topic and make sure I share relevant info. And also it's good for learning to see something as well as hear. So I will be sharing my screen and sharing my slides with you. So let me just get those up and then we shall continue. It means you can also catch a little bit about me. Here we go. Share screen. Looking for. Okay, so I believe that you should be able to see that now. Correct? Yep, brilliant. So I represent here my organization, the Like Me CIC, and today we're looking at empowering women through self-leadership. So what does that mean? I'm going to spell it out for you. But before I get there, you'll kind of sense that empowerment really is my thing. Look at the tagline, it's empowered well-being for your well-doing. Because I believe that when we are empowered, when we are, I'll define it a little bit, then we can manage our well-being, which allows us to do well in life. Let's continue. Of course, that's me, Jasmine Mbye, the unusual surname to fill in there. So the agenda, I'll give you a little bit about me and about the organization and then some objectives for today. We're going to look at what are women's challenges. What is it that women face in work and in business? Also share a little bit about me and my story and my why here today. Why did I want to come and share at this round table? And then I really believe in the importance of defining things so that we're absolutely clear on what we're talking about. And then I want to share with you a couple of circles that I want you to take away and to put into practice in your daily life, in your business life, in your personal life. These circles can make a tremendous difference. And then we can think about what next. Now, whenever I share, I like to talk about this little napkin. It was literally a picture that I saw when I was scrolling through pictures one day. I thought, I'm going to share this in all of my sessions. I just think it's something that's really key for life. You know, a good reminder for any woman in business, I'm quite sure, and any woman who's career-minded, is we need to remember to relax, to slow down, to breathe, like kind of breathe, take it easy, enjoy life and smile. And so wherever I go now, I'll make it a point of sharing that because one of these will just kind of probably be a little bit of a thing. You know what? That speaks to me. So whichever one speaks to you, take that away to remind yourself to do a bit more of that. So who am I? As I said, my name is Jasmine Mbye. I am the Empowerment Champion, a TEDx multi-award-winning international speaker, trainer, coach, and an overcomer of abuse. And whenever I share, I use what I've coined as the double P approach. So I use not only my professional expertise, as I said, I'm a qualified trainer, coach, but also my personal experience. Because in doing so, when you share stories that people can relate to, it makes for a far more transformational experience. And the Like Me CIC is a personal leadership, employability, and wellbeing company. Ta-da! It started in 2018 that helps women and teen girls who deep down may feel like they're not enough and are afraid to be truly seen, to stop hiding, take off the mask, stop pretending everything's good and we're all okay, gain confidence and take control of their life. And this is by developing personal leadership, enhancing employability and improving well-being. And we work with organizations and individuals to unleash female potential because we have a mission and it's to empower and inspire 1 million women and girls. In doing that, we recognize that billions of possibilities are going to be created. So let's get on with this. So the objectives for today's session, by the end of this session, you'll be able to meaningfully define empower or empowerment. And we'll have an action step which supports you using the circles that I'm going to share with you to empower yourself in your life and in your business, to take you to another step, to another level. So what I'd like you to think about right now is, what do you think are the challenges that women face? What do you think are the challenges women face in business? What do you think women face in work? What challenges? Do you think they're different? Do you think they're the same? I'd love to know. What are the challenges that you think women face? Take a moment, have a little think about maybe the challenges that you're facing. Do you think others face them? Or what do you think women in general are facing in their respective places? And of course, I'm going to share in just a moment. Okay, so what are these challenges? So let's start off by looking at the challenges, the top challenges that women face in the workplace. So insufficient childcare and caregiving support. I mean, we see it in the news, or we will have seen it. Google now brings it up on my phone every day. The cost of childcare, it's so extortionate. We are unfortunately one of the countries that are in there with the most costly childcare. And that primarily affects us women, because we're still the primary caregivers for our children. And therefore, when childcare becomes very expensive, it's women that by and large say, okay, then I'll step back in my career and I'll step back in the business in order to enable me to take care of the children or our child. And the lack of cost-effective, affordable childcare is a major issue, because it means that I've recently read about a doctor who said, actually, I quit being a doctor because we couldn't both do it and afford childcare. So this is affecting women in work. Lack of access to flexible and remote work, which kind of links into the childcare really, because often women are the ones that go home, they cook, they clean, they wash, they iron. There's still, a lot of the household responsibilities that fall to us. And so the lack of flexible and remote working means that we find it more difficult to balance work life and home life, as well as taking care of the children. And a widening gender pay gap. Can you believe it? In 2022, because of the pandemic, we're seeing the pay gap widening rather than decreasing. They're saying it would take approximately 200 years. I repeat, 200 years for women to earn as much as men in general, which is absolutely ridiculous. I cannot remember the exact date, and I'll have to check it out for this year, but I remember last year it was a date in mid-November, from which point onwards women were working for free. And when you put it like that and think, hold on a minute, there's 6 weeks of the year that because of my gender I'm not getting paid for. That is absolutely unacceptable. Like, it's infuriating. So widening gender pay gap is a major issue that women face. And then we've got things like a lack of sponsorship in the work environment. Somebody's not there to say, you know what, I will sponsor you. I'm going to help support you on your development journey so that you can advance further in your career, because you've got the potential, you've got what it takes. Let me support you. Women aren't accessing that sponsorship as well as often as men. And then unconscious bias. Now, we call it unconscious bias because we're giving people the benefit of the doubt. And the unfortunate truth is it's not always unconscious. Some people are blatantly aware of their bias, but we give people the benefit of the doubt. And what really strikes a chord in my mind here is, I cannot remember where on social media that I read about it, but it was a man saying just how he became aware of unconscious bias. He was contacting one of the organizations he works for, clients, and he had not realized that he was emailing them from his colleague's email address. And so when he was contacting this client who he's dealt with before and has a very good relationship with, they would question him in a way that they wouldn't usually question him. And he was a bit taken aback by it. And it wasn't until 3 or 4 email exchanges later that he realized he was emailing from his colleague's email address and not his own. To then understand that just on a day-to-day basis, when a woman says something, it's a let's Let's think about that. Let's investigate that. But if a man says it, it's much more likely to be taken with gravitas and weight. So unconscious bias. In that case, I don't know that the man was aware, because it was a man that he was dealing with, of the fact that he was undermining the female and wouldn't undermine the man in that case. So maybe it was unconscious. But in some cases, people are aware, but they still conduct themselves in this way. So these are the kind of challenges that women in the workplace are facing. So, yes, I can see in the chat there, a massive lack of training in the financial arena. And that, of course, women not being given, it's often found that women are developed in very niche areas. So equality and diversity, they're developed in the specific areas, but they're not given the general training that often can advance their careers as a whole. They just only HR, so we tend to get that kind of development, but not the all round, which enables us to be more likely to make it into that boardroom. So yes, I can definitely understand that one there. Now, for women in business, do you think the challenges, are going to be the same, or do you think they're going to differ? Well, let's find out what they are. So the top challenges in business that women face are a shortage of funding. Businesses often, to get started, need some capital, and funding is a great way to get that capital, but not as accessible for women typically. And then we've got the psychological barriers and bias against women. So psychological barriers can mean the barriers within our own minds, and then the unconscious bias that we were just referring to a moment ago. Fear of failure. This is an internal element here. It's our own dialogue that we may have and our own perception around failure. And that is something that, when I reframed my understanding of failure, it made all the difference in my life, because no more did I need to absolutely know that the step I was going to take was going to work. But I actually opened myself up to just trying and seeing, because I realized getting it wrong, things not working out, doesn't mean that I failed. One of the things I'd love every woman who watches this session to take away is that you cannot fail. You personally cannot fail, in terms of you cannot be a failure. That's not a label that we should ever wear. What you attempt to do may fail, but you as an individual don't fail. You're just learning, you're just developing, and you're just growing. So if we can shift our focus around that, it makes all the difference. And this is what comes into that empowered mindset that I'm going to talk about in a moment. Lack of network and mentors. That's kind of like another way of saying lack of sponsorship. But in obviously the business arena, it's about who do we know? And who's ahead of us that we can follow, that we can ask questions when we don't know the answer. If we haven't got those mentors, if we haven't got that network of, I know so-and-so, and they've gone from here to here to open up a door and create an opportunity for us, it challenges us in business. And of course, it's the childcare again, juggling childcare and a growing business. And if you think about the first challenge of shortage of funding, women are getting less funding. So we've got less pennies, and we're on the one that's often thinking, right, because I've got the kids in nursery or preschool on that day, I can do some business activity. So our money is actually used for that childcare. If we haven't got that money, the struggle's even harder. So these are the kind of challenges that we are facing in the corporate career space and in the business space. So take a moment and just think about, what are the challenges that you resonate with and that you can identify are impacting you right now, or maybe quite recently have impacted you. Always good to personalize things. Okay, so hopefully you've written something down, and then we're going to come back to that after we've looked at what I'm hoping will really make a massive difference in the way that you're thinking, enable you to lead in your life so that you can show up in your business, in your work, in your career, as you truly are and truly can. So just a little bit more about me. So why am I here today? Why do I love to do stuff like this? If you can't tell, I do love this. And it's because I've been through a lot of stuff and I'm making it out the other end. And they often say, whatever you've been through is about turning around and throwing a lifeline out to those that are behind you, so they too can kind of rise above and get through what are the challenges that they face. And so my personal story is that for me, growing up was really, really tough. I was my mom's only child and the eldest of my dad's 4 girls. Emotional and physical abuse were a regular part of my life. And so from a very early age, I learned to cope with difficulty and with struggle. And it was normal to function in dysfunction. What made a huge difference to me was faith and focus. My faith, my belief in God enabled me to get through times where I just actually didn't really want to make it because it just was so unpleasant. I'd lost the will to even make it beyond. But thank God, focusing on the good and on the positive was what helped me get through those really dark and difficult times. And if you want to hear a bit more of my story, please feel free to go and watch my TEDx. It's, what's it called again, if I can remember it? Stop Hiding, Show Up and Shine. Feel free to check it out. You've got my surname. But my why today is I wanted to share something that empowered me in my business and in my life, and that I believe will make a positive impact on yours, help you in your business and help you in your life. Because what I've most definitely come to learn in as recent as the last year is the way we show up in our business is a reflection of how we're showing up in our life. It's very unusual that someone shows up in life kind of confident and manages things really well, in their business they kind of fall apart. It's usually a direct reflection. And so, look at the list of challenges. It prompted me to share something from our Honing Me program that we've got at the Like Me CIC. Something really simple, yet really profound. And it's from a man called Stephen Covey. You may have heard of him because he's really well known. And he talks about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. So I want to know, is this something that you've heard of? Circle of influence, circle of concern. Ah, yes, a nod there and a shake head there. All right, so a refresher if you've heard of it, and some enlightenment if you haven't. Simple, very simple. And that's saying, keep it simple, stupid. I think it works because if it's simple, we can take it, we can run with it, we can do it. And also we can easily apply it to our lives and in as many areas of our life as possible. So before I get there, let's just define a couple of words. As I'm talking about empowering women through self-leadership. And empowerment is a word that's bandied about. I like to call myself the empowerment champion because it's something I'm really, really passionate about. And I have people say to me, oh, do you want to change your wording? Because empower, it's so overutilized. I'm like, but that is what I want to do. That's what I believe in. And I think until you really look at the definition, because people say, nobody else should empower you. And I'm like, what definition of empower are you looking at? Because the one that I'm looking at actually is all about empowering. So let's define these words before we get into looking at those circles, so we've got the right understanding to move forward. So power, we all have power. And as women, we do a lot of this. We've got the power, we have it, we're born with it. And obviously when you're younger, you don't know anything. So you have to be empowered. And unfortunately for some of us, we don't get a good example of what it is to be empowered, and we're not given that empowerment. So it's never handed to us. But there are many of us who grow up and we are empowered, but we're just really good at giving it away. And we just constantly give it away. So what is it that we're giving away? Power is the ability or the capacity to do something or act in a particular way. That's the definition that I'm really liking. We also have the capacity or the ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. Now, for us as women, power isn't something that sits so well with us. And I think that's why we prefer the word to empower. It sits more naturally within the feminine psyche. Power in this kind of, we think of power as being very kind of masculine and male and kind of to do with domination. But as we can see there, it's not necessarily so. Nonetheless, I'm still preferring to use empowerment, but we still need to understand power is something that we all have. The question to ask yourself is, do you own it? Or are you giving that away? Because even in your business, that is your business. Some people run their business like they're not the CEO, like they're not the one that makes the decisions, because they're so readily giving away that power, listening to what everybody else says, what they should do, rather than actually taking on board. It's about getting advice, taking on board feedback, but then you make the decision that you believe is right for you in your business, to take you and your business forward. Power. Then we have empower. This is the first definition: to give someone the authority or power to do something. So that has its place. I'm empowering my daughter. She's 4.5 years old. She'll always tell you about that half. So 4.5 years old, and I'm empowering her so that she can learn and grow on how to make good decisions and how to stick to them. She's got a bit of a people-pleasing tendency. She likes people and she likes to be liked. So I'm trying to help her understand it's good to like that, but you know what? You've got to stick to your guns, darling. So I am giving her that authority and that power to know that she can do that. When we become an adult, it's less about that. Obviously, if we're in the world of work, then there are some things that we do need authority to be given to us to execute upon. But as adults, we are often the ones that need to empower ourselves. And those people, when they talk about, nobody else can empower you, they're primarily looking at that first definition, as opposed to the latter one, which is what we focus on at the Like Me CIC. It's making someone stronger and more confident, especially in controlling their life and claiming their rights. Because the reality is, if I don't know my rights, I cannot claim them. So when someone comes along and empowers you by helping you understand you have this right, you have that, that is where someone is empowering you in such a way. They're now helping to make you stronger so that you recognize, I have the liberty to do this, and you can then execute that. Understanding what it takes to help build your confidence, that's the empowerment that we can all give to one another. And what I'm helping is, by the end of this roundtable, you're feeling more equipped, more enabled to make good decisions for yourself and for your business. Empowerment, feeling that bit stronger, that bit more confident, and understanding how to maintain that. Because the final word is focus, which is about paying particular attention to. How powerful and how empowered we feel is dependent on that, our focus. What is it that we're focusing on? Are we looking at our business and focusing on those things that are not working, those things that are difficult, those struggles, our deficiencies, what we are not good at, as opposed to focusing, and this is a mental focus as much as a practical focus in time and energy, on those things that we are good at, that we can do, that allow us to shine. Everyone, I believe in that Marianne Williamson quote, everyone is born to shine. And I'm speaking from experience here. In my business, I had a real struggle up until last year. And I realized it's because sometimes we kind of fall into things in our business. And I fell into doing events. I am not an events person. I had never put on an event before starting doing business. But I launched my business in 2018, did my first event in 2019, and it went really well. And I was like, oh, so I'm like, okay, let's keep doing this. However, it really isn't my forte. I'm a speaker and I'm a trainer and I'm a coach. I really need to, as they say, stay in my lane, because when I'm doing that, I do a really good job. Events, however, with all the marketing and the planning, yeah, not so great. That was, however, what I focused on, and I was doing loads of it and just not seeing the results that I wanted to see. And in shifting my focus, literal mental focus, it has led to my business completely moving in a different direction, and now, just stabilizing and having much more effect and ease. Focus. What is it that you're focusing on? And what I'm going to share with you with these circles, it's a great way of just getting this to work in a way that helps you, that leads you and allows you to lead in your life. Because if we're in a business and if we're wanting to progress in our career, we've got to take ownership. I think I said in my little social media post for this session, you know, it starts with you. It ends with you, in my opinion, but it's not all about you. It starts with me. If I want to make something happen, I've got to do that. I cannot sit down and wait on somebody else. So it starts with me and it ends with me, but it's not all about me. It's about going and connecting with others to make the magic happen. It's all in the connection. But that beginning and that end, it's with us. So focus. Let's look now at these circles, the circle of influence and the circle of concern. So let's look at a much smaller circle of influence and a much larger circle of concern, because influence is something that I can have some power over. You know, I can make an impact on. Concern, it's something that, you know, I'm worried about to some degree. You know, it's something on my mind, but I may have very little influence upon that. So what kind of things we're talking about? We can see there. Circle of concern is in that sphere, in that part of the circle, are things that we have no or little control over, such as gossip. You know, what people are saying about us, really, is it going to do anything for you and your business and your career? If it's not, why are you so bothered about it? But oftentimes we can spend a lot of time and energy in these spaces, others' feelings and or actions. If other people's feelings and actions does not in any way hinder or advance you, why are you wasting your focus, which is your energy, on it? We've got what other people think of me. Now, of course, in the world of business and in your career, it does matter to a degree, because if people think you're incompetent, you've got a problem. Your business isn't going to go anywhere. So there is a level of that we need to be concerned about. But that's about, and this is where the focus is key. If I'm just worried about what other people think of me, as in everyone and anyone, I'm wasting my time and I'm wasting my energy. If I'm worried about what people think about me in terms of my professionalism, my capability, you know, my organization as a whole, that matters. And that's about getting feedback, not just the, oh, do they like me? No, get feedback to see what people really do think about you. Ask people for their thoughts and their views, but don't just sit worrying and stressing about these things. Past events and or regrets, things that have already happened that we cannot change. We often stew and swirl on these things, yet we can do nothing about it because it's already happened. And then we've got the news. I actually don't really watch the news. My husband, he's a big news watcher, but I don't watch the news because it's something that will consume my time and consume my energy, yet it's overwhelmingly negative and doesn't help me much at all. You've got war. Now, unless you're planning to, you know, pack some stuff up and take it to people in the war, or you're donating, the reality is you have very little to no impact on whether there is a war and how people are, you know, treated in that. So spending much energy on it is really just a waste of your time and energy. And then the weather, you know, as much as those people that hate the weather and the heat right now, you can hate it, you can moan about it. Is it going to change? It's still going to be hot. This weekend's still going to be the hottest weekend of the year, whether you spend loads of time stewing about it or not. So why spend a lot of time and a lot of focus in these areas? Instead, why not enlarge our circle of influence? Let's look at what that would be like and what that's likely to include. So how we start to spend more time and give more of our attention to the things that the things that we can control. So what actions I take personally in my business, what I do, that's what I'm going to focus on, because that's in my circle of influence. What I read, you know, we can pick up the paper and we can read all the various stories, or we can choose to read something that's more beneficial to helping us have the mindset that we want to have, helping us have the focus that we want to have, achieve the things we want to achieve. Now, I love to read novels, so course, I'm not saying that that's not something to do and to entertain. There's a time for everything, but it's about, another thing on there, knowing that I'm making a choice, and I'm recognizing that and doing that, choosing. Now's my time to switch off and relax. I'm going to do this as part of that, as opposed to wasting our time and wasting our energy and our focus. Where I shop, that's definitely within my power. What I buy, relationships with others, in business, at work, we have to be professional. There will be, if we're in a work environment, some people that you need to have a professional relationship with. It doesn't mean you've got to chit chat with them. You can simply speak to them in that professional capacity and done. Moving on, because you understand maybe that person is a bit of a gossiper or whatever else. Their energy is quite negative. They bring people down, whatever it might be. That means you're not really wanting to have much of a relationship with that person. Have no more than is necessary. We can choose. And in business, you get to choose completely. You get to choose whom you do business with. The number of people that have said they've had a client that they're like, I'm not sure, taking that client on, only down the line to think, you know what, here you go, there's your money back, because you are more stressed than it is worth, just because they're not realizing you can say no. Just because someone wants to work with you doesn't mean that you have to work with them. Doesn't mean that you have to form any kind of relationship with them. It's your choice. My attitude, the same thing can happen to two people. How they interpret that, how they respond to that can be completely different, because attitude is something within our control. And as I mentioned already, our choices, what we choose to do, what time of day we choose to wake up, who we choose to have our business relationships with and our professional relationships with, who we choose to work for if we're in a job. You don't have to work for the employer that you're working for. If you don't like them, you can find somebody else to work for. That's the reality. The business that you're doing, you don't have to do that business. You could choose to do a different one. Now, I'm not saying these things are easily done, but they are possible. And it's just about recognizing that it's within your power. It's within your circle of influence. Because when you understand it sits within your circle of influence, then what naturally occurs is a question. So what am I going to do about that? If I don't think it's something that I can do much about, and I push it into that, I'm just worried about this, then the probability is I'm spending so much time and energy on things that I'm unable to really make an impact on. I don't give enough time, energy, and attention to those things that I can make a difference in. I'm worrying about what that colleague is saying about me, the gossip part of things, not what they think about my professional capability or how well I'm doing my work, but the gossip. And because I'm worrying about that, I'm letting that impact me and how well I do my job and whom I'm connecting with and whether I go further forward in my professional life. I'm worried about, the fact that someone has said something on social media that, like, your one person made one negative comment or one negative direct message. And it's like, actually, really just a drop in the ocean. I don't even need to take that on board, because it's not really anything to do with me. That person clearly is having a bad day. I haven't done anything. That's just their take on life. Moving swiftly on. Let me focus on the fact that there is somebody out there that I want to make a difference to, and I can make a difference for. So I'm going to do that. Going back to myself, when I shifted my focus from doing events, so actually I'm a speaker. That's what I do really well. Let me focus on the speaking. Let me find platforms where other people do the events, because they're good at that, and I'll do what I'm good at. I'll do this. Apparently, I've been doing this since I was 6 months old, and anyone that knows me is like, yeah, sounds about right. So, I do it very well. So therefore, let me focus on that part, and I've seen the benefits from that, because I have chosen to focus on what I do well, and that allows my business to gain a greater platform and for me to advance in my business. And that came from the fact that I realized I needed to stop and take stock of where I was. What am I doing? Because I wasn't happy with things. What am I doing? And having good mentorship. We talked about that sponsorship, good mentors, having access to mentorship really enabled me to make that difference. because they were like, what's the focus in the business? And I'm like, it's a good question, actually. What are you doing to raise your profile? Good question. And I was getting asked all these good questions that I didn't really have answers for. What is your focus in your life and in your business? Because I said, the focus in your life, if you're usually overwhelmed in your life, you're probably quite overwhelmed in your business. If you're quite organized and manage your life well, then you'll probably find that's reflected in your business. Life, business, or career, different sides of the coin. They are not two distinct things. They're different sides of the coin because we are whole beings. And so to think that we can kind of draw this line and just talk about one without talking about the other, I think is really remiss of us. We are whole beings. So to talk about life and work or life and business is critical because they intersect, they relate so strongly. We are one person, and therefore it's going to have an impact. If business is stressful, that affects my life. If my life is stressful, that affects my business. So what is your focus? And so I've made decisions that actually want to calm business down a bit so that I can spend more time at home focusing on those things that I really want to. Because if business is demanding and frustrating, then actually that's going to come out in my life at home. If I'm frustrated at home, it's going to come out probably in business. So we've got to assess where we are, what are our goals, and then focus on those. What is it that we want to achieve? What are we good at? Questions are one of the most powerful tools, underutilized tools that we have as individuals. The questions that we ask ourselves are the things that will take us to the next level. So once again, I ask you, where is your focus? What are you focused on in your personal life and in your business or in your career? Because that will dictate your success. When I shifted the focus, business shifted, life shifted. It's all connected. And by just recognizing I'm unhappy in my relationship, I'm feeling really frustrated, what can I do? Not pointing the finger at him, but what can I do about this? Actually, I'm going to sit him down and I'm going to tell him how I'm feeling. I did that. It created some understanding. May have made him feel a bit uncomfortable, but that's not my responsibility, how others feel. That understanding of where my responsibility kind of stops and where my focus needs to lie more heavily has just shifted my relationship as well as shifted my business. It's really key that we grasp what is within our control, what is within our power versus what sits outside of it. And does it mean that we don't care about other people's feelings? No, but it's just that we're not more focused on their feelings than we are on ourselves and what we can actually control and do. So now let's think about how we can adapt a more proactive focus, because that's what I'm talking about. And that's the empowered mindset that if we take that into our business, if we take that into our careers, that's what's going to propel us to go to the next level. Because instead of thinking just about the challenges, which I'm going to reflect on in a moment, and oh dear, we're oppressed by X, Y, and Z, we start to think about the how question. So the reactive focus is where we spend the majority of our time and energy on our concerns and problems. We look at those challenges and we're just like, oh, well, it's so difficult because we haven't got the funding, we haven't got the sponsorship, we haven't got the childcare, and we look at what we haven't got and we don't take responsibility for our own situation. Now, I'm not saying that these challenges aren't real. We've already addressed them. But what I'm saying is they don't have to be the reason why you stay where you are. They exist, acknowledge them, but don't give in to them. So now let's look at how we can move from reactive to becoming proactive. So now we're starting to change our focus. We're going to choose to redirect our time and our energy. Quite often when we're saying, I don't have enough time, it's a lie. An outright lie. You're lying to yourself, you're lying to everyone else. What you really are more likely not to have is energy. Now, as women, we are very busy, typically speaking, because we're juggling a lot. They say the average woman needs 20 minutes more sleep. I can't remember what study it was a few years ago. I read it. Women need 20 minutes more sleep than the average man, because the average woman uses her brain in the same way that the male executive who sits on the board uses his brain. So the average man does not in the way that we do. They're just very linear. 1 step, 2 step, 3. Whereas we're always juggling. So, time is a factor for us. However, there are still going to be some things that we are allowing ourselves to get drawn into with your family, in the workplace, in our businesses. We're drawn into things that we don't really need to. We can free ourselves from because they deplete our energy. So that when there is time, we're like, just need to sit on the sofa. Because actually, I just don't have anything left. I'm spent. But there is some time possibly, but there isn't the energy. This is why changing our focus is so important, so that we can emit, we can remove those things that really we don't need to be so focused upon because they're just concerns. Acknowledge them, move on. Focus on the areas of influence, which means we can have more impact, waste less time and energy, because we begin to focus on those things within our control, within our power, and we start making a difference or more of a difference. Because if we're able to make a difference and yet we're still very concern focused, imagine how much more of a difference, how much more of an impact we can have if we can change that focus to being more proactive, less reactive. So when we're proactive, we're now devoting the majority of our time and energy to changing what's in our control, aka what's within our power. And this allows our life, this allows our career and our business to improve because we stop blaming others. So it might be that actually, you know what? I'm not getting the advancement in my career. I'm not being put forward for the promotions. So you're waiting to be put forward for the promotions. Right there, it's about you putting yourself forward for the promotion then. All right, I'm putting myself forward, but I'm not getting the promotion. Time and time again, I'm overlooked. So then look elsewhere for an employer who will recognize your capability and be willing to give you that chance. It's what can you do in your business? I'm just finding that things aren't opening up. I'm not, okay, but what have you tried? What other things could you try? Oh, but I don't like. Okay, now you mentioned not liking to do something. Quite often, the things that we don't like to do in a business are the things that will unlock our business and help us go to the next level. I'm a bit shy, or I don't really have the confidence to go out there and meet people. So that's why I don't network or I don't speak. I'm not qualified. Oftentimes, they say women need to feel 100% qualified to go for a job. Me, 100%. A man feels, generally speaking, he needs about 60%. So if there's 10 things, a woman thinks, right, I meet all 10 criteria, I'll go for the job. One missing, she's like, I don't fit it, and is likely not to go forward for that. A man says, I can do 6. 4 that he can't do, he's like, right, that's it, putting in an application. Hence why we're not always getting those promotions, because we're not putting ourselves forward for them, because we think we need to fit and tick every box. Men don't often think like that. So this is where changing our focus can really help. A wise man called Les Brown, excuse me, he says, make your move before you're ready. Great speaker. Make your move before you're ready. Don't wait to feel ready. Because you know what? There'll always be something. There'll always be something. And a lot of women have a perfectionist tendency, a perfectionist driver. We want to get it just right. All the kinks out. Who says you're ever going to get there? So why not put it out and get feedback? So it's really key that we shift from this reactive focus or a less reactive focus to a more proactive focus to enable us to take advantage of every opportunity there are, and more importantly, to challenge the obstacles that we face. So just as a reminder, things like the insufficient childcare and caregiving support. Now, obviously, childcare costs what it costs. You probably can go to the nursery, the preschool, and make all the noise that you want. They're probably not going to change their fees. So that's not going to work. However, if you have a partner, challenging them to say, why is it that I'm expected to do more than you? actually, I need you to step up. I need you to do X, Y, and Z because I've also got things that I need to do. You know, you may want to go for a drink after work. Why should you get to go for a drink after when actually I need a bit more of a break? So there can be those kinds of challenging conversations that we can have, but may often shy away from because we're trying to fit some ideal, or we've got a narrative running through our head that it's supposed to be us. Question is why? A really powerful question I always encourage people to ask is this serving me? Is this belief? Is this attitude? Is this relationship? Is it serving me? Because if it isn't, time to, switch, time to get rid, move on, something else, change it. Relationships, it's your choice. Do you have them? And that goes for all relationships. Sounds really cutthroat, and I'm not really cutthroat like that. But if you need to be, why not? Or it's about having those conversations so that a relationship can be more balanced and more fitting and suitable. So, lack of access to flexible and remote working. Now, a lot of people are just simply saying, I'm not willing to come back into the office. If you're not willing to work with me on that, I'll find another employer that is. Why do we feel that we have to stay in a role if it doesn't work for us? Employers are crying for staff right about now. It is an employees market. People are desperate to get highly suitable, highly qualified candidates. There is no excuse to stay in a role that does not fit you if you're in the career space. And we're going to come on to the business women's challenges in a moment. So a widening gender pay gap. A lot of the time, women wait to get a pay rise. Women wait to have someone say, you've done a really great job, I'll pay you more, as opposed to creating their case for why they should get paid more. So it's about actually saying, you know what, I want to see some stats from my company. What are the pay kind of discrepancies here? Let's have this open and transparent, challenging things where we can. Or just on a personal level, I'd like to be paid more. I do a good job. I've saved this much money. I've brought this much in. What value have you added to justify getting paid more? Challenge, so that we can level the playing field. Lack of sponsorship, that may be us taking the onus to find somebody to sponsor us. And if not in this organization, maybe in a different organization, but stretching out our spheres, our horizons to find what it is that we need. And then, of course, unconscious bias. As an individual, I cannot change the way that somebody else thinks. I cannot change the way that somebody else feels. Circle of influence, circle of control, that's outside of it. However, what I can do is raise awareness of when I believe that I am being subjected to somebody's bias, to provoke someone to think about the bias that they may be unwittingly displaying, to challenge it, to find a suitable way to do so, but be willing to do so. Because unless the term is now calling it out, unless we're willing to do that, how will that person realize they've got an unconscious bias? We're going to wait for them to go on unconscious bias training. Will they ever? What is it that I can do? What is within my circle of control? And then let's review now the challenges that women in business face. A shortage of funding. But the fact is, there's still funding, right? So go for it. Apply for everything and anything that you can apply for. Connect with other people that know about funding. There are organizations out there that will help you find suitable funding, that will help you apply for funding. Obviously, that requires money in some cases, so it can be a challenge, but we can do things like think about a pro bono, right? Will you be willing to do this for me and I'll do something of value for you? Just whatever we have, think about how we can use that to support us in the areas that we're struggling. When it comes to psychological barriers, the barriers within us, that's where it's about connecting with organizations like the Women's Business Club, connecting with others and being open and transparent. This is a challenge that I'm facing. Has anyone else faced that? How do you deal with that? Get coaches, get training, work on you, lead you by being honest about who you are and where you are. It was only when I admitted Actually, you know what? I'm doing all this stuff and nothing's working. Like, I need some help. It was only in that moment that I was able to really see the change in my business. So, what are the barriers? What are the mindsets that are holding you back? Keep asking that question. Is this belief empowering me that I need to be able to do everything in my business, rather than get people on board to support me with their specialism and let me do what I do well? That fear of failure. If you focus on what you can do, what's within your influence, and then recognize that stuff that's outside of it, then you're now empowered to think, right, so what I can do is learn from failure. What I cannot do is stop myself from failing, because you know what? I won't know something works until I try. So let me try and then learn from it, because that's what I have the power to do. I cannot ensure that when I launch my this, or when I attempt to do that it's going to work, because you don't know. You don't know. Lack of networks and mentors. So a lack of them. Are you part of a network? How many networks are you part of? There are networks that exist out there, like Women's Business Club, that are expressly for women, all about empowering them, all about supporting them. Get in there, plug into the networks, because there are people that are like me, like you, that have the same challenges, that want to grow, that want to develop personally and professionally. So by connecting, we can become a network. And then, someone just needs to be a few steps ahead of you to be a mentor. Finding those people, even if they're not people that you can connect with on a personal level, just having a mentor, someone that's been there, done that, and further ahead, a figure that you may know of, read their books, follow them on social media, follow somebody, have someone that you can look up to that's doing something similar to you. But if you look hard enough, you will find things. If we start just talking about what it is that we want and focus on that, you'll be surprised at what you attract. Because we often spend more time talking about what's not working, what we're getting that we don't want, we get more of that. I believe in the law of attraction. So if we start talking about, I want a mentor, I really want a mentor, everyone that you meet, tell them you want a mentor. You'll be surprised how all of a sudden someone's like, I know somebody and they do mentoring, or have you thought about this organization, or do you know about that? Because people don't know that you want that unless you tell them. But the minute you're specific in what it is that you are wanting, what it is that you want to do, because that's what's within your power control, to be mentored, you can be mentored. Now you'll be surprised at how that might come about. And we talked about the childcare and juggling that. That's about recognizing that we're not an island. And as women, you know what they say, it takes a village. Listen, who is your village? Get your village on board, because there are people that you've done favors for. Call in those favors. You know what? I have helped you and I need some help now. It's in the form of childcare. Can you help me out? Because I can't afford to put my little one in nursery or in the after school clubs. Club together, and as women, we can support one another. And we will find a way over, under, around, tunnel a hole through. But when we have that mindset of, I need to look at what I can do, what is within my circle of influence, we recognize barriers are not things to stop us. They are merely things to overcome. The question is how. Full stop. And then we find a way. So, I forgot I was going to ask that little question. How can our focus impact on these challenges? We've already gone through that. If there's anything that you want to add, feel free to add. But that was what I wanted to share with you, that I thought would be valuable to enable you to deal with this, because this is what makes the difference. It's the beliefs and the values that we have that inform our actions that we take. So when we can change what we focus on, it can change the way that we feel. And that can change, therefore, what we do. All right, so what I'd like you to do is take a moment now and think about a step that you can take based on the circle of influence and the circle of concern, this is control, I should say concern, to empower yourself, to empower you in your business, to take that step forward, to empower you in your career, to take that step forward, and as I said, in life, because I don't see them as being so disparate. They're all connected. What's a step that you can take based on what I've just shared? Take a moment and think about that. feel free to share what you've come up with. You don't become a trainer or whatever because you're not inquisitive. You like to know stuff. So I'd like to know. So feel free to share with me what your thoughts are and what your takeaway is that you can put into practice, because learning is great. But I heard many years ago, actually, when I started my business, inspiration without perspiration is futile. Unless you're going to do something with what you've learned, put it into practice in some way. It's just nice, but it certainly ain't necessary. All right, so what have we got here? All right, so just thinking about it makes circle of influence. Yeah, it does. Whatever you focus on. So if you think about circle of influence, it grows, because a wise lady, Danny Johnson, she was really instrumental in helping me before I started my business, but just getting some of that right mindset. She said, what you focus on grows and what you neglect dies. And that's because get a blank sheet of A4 paper, put a dot in the middle of it. If you put that dot further back, bring it really, the focus on that dot, it's everything. It's all you see. Put it further away, then you can see it's an A4 sheet of paper, actually, and there's a lot of space around the dot. So whatever we focus on, that's what seems bigger in our mind's eye, and therefore it's growing. So we can use that to our aid. Focus on the things that move us forward, less on the things that don't. All right, so I want to say thank you very much for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure. If anyone has any questions, now's the time to ask. And please do connect with me at the Like Me CIC on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because we're on all the platforms. Oh, not to worry about joining late. Thank you for coming in. That's fantastic. Hopefully you can get to watch the beginning, the recording. But yeah, if there are any questions,